Hey folks, I'm going to show you how to set up the IC-R6 scanner. I searched many times on Google and all the forums trying to find information, and I could hardly get anything. So I sat and read the manual for a couple of weeks, and eventually figured out quite a bit of this myself. So I thought I'd just pass it on to you. I primarily use it for air shows, and I know that there's lots of other uses for this. So I'm just going to give you a brief introduction to how I set up for an air show and go about things. Uh, Before we start, if you look at I've got Google up here, and we're going to use Sioux Falls Airport as an example. I typed into Google Sioux Falls, looked for the airport code, and I can see down here on the flight view that it's FSD. So what I do next is, because what I'm trying to do here is find out what does the airport look like, so I can position myself well for photography, look at what's east and west, where the sun is going to be, what part of the airport we're going to be in. It'll give me a pretty good idea, and also use it as a reference when I get there. So I'm trying to look at what does the airport look like, as well as what is the frequencies of the tower, so I can hook into those as well. So now I know that it's FSD. If you I go over to the flightplan.com, and there's a link in the detail below to show how to get to this. I look at approach charts and I type in FSD. Sometimes you have to put a K before all of that. I hit submit, and comes up with KFSD automatically. The uh, Joe Foss Field in Sioux Falls. And if I scroll down to the bottom, I look at the airport diagram. This pops up the airport diagram in the PSD, and I'm going to minimize this here. What this does, which is pretty cool, is gives me an exact diagram of what the Sioux Falls airport looks like. What's key to this, if we look at the top left, we have the air tower is 126.6, the Sioux Falls tower is 118.3, 257.8. Ground control of these two frequencies. I also know what is north and south, and looking at the Sioux Falls Airshow information, all entrances through the SDANG, the South Dakota Air National Guard. So we'll be coming through. All the static displays will be down by the ANG at the bottom here, and most of the show will be held at the lower portion. So now I've got a good idea as to east to west, to morning sun versus the late sun, as well as pretty much the direction of what the show box would look like around the airport. So that gives me a pretty good idea. What I do is I take these designated frequencies, and now I can plug them into the scanner. And we'll go next to show how I set up the scanner and the types of frequency.
Okay, so here's just a look at some of the gear that I use. On the bottom left is the IC-R6 scanner, really small and compact. That has a diamond antenna in. Then I have the 1/8" mono male to stereo female jack. The reason for this is the scanner outputs through the speaker port only in a single channel. So if you want to listen in earphones or record on both left and right, then you are going to have to use this jack and plug it into the top. Above that I have a 3-foot stereo male to stereo male, and this is used to either plug into any kind of recording device that you want. If you're at the air show, it's usually really loud that you can't hear much of that speaker anyway, because you have the speaker comms from the master ceremonies. So it's always advisable just to use earphones if you're just using the scanner. But what I like to do is also record the audio. If we're listening to the pilots, etc., it's nice just to keep that on file. So my setup is I go from a scanner through the mono to stereo output into a 3-foot cable, and that goes into my recording device. And this is I use a Sony Digital here, and it has a VOX capability. What this means is it's basically voice operated or sound operated. If you enable that, it'll only record when sound comes through the scanner, so you don't have to sit and go through an 8-hour program trying to find when any sound was made. This compacts it. As soon as it hears a voice, it's voice operated, and hears a sound coming through, it'll record. As soon as the pilot stops speaking, it'll stop recording, and that way you can actually get 3-4 days of airshow sound compacted into less than 1 gigabyte. So from there, I then go from the digital recorder out to the earphones, because it's important to hear through the earphones what's being recorded on the recorder. Instead of splitting it out through the scanner, you won't really know what's going on with the recorder, and it's very tricky to balance out the volume of the scanner with how it's being recorded on the digital recorder. So I go from the scanner through the output into the digital recorder, record that, and then I have earphones into my recorder listening to whatever is being recorded there, so I can understand what that quality is. So that's pretty much a pretty straightforward setup for the equipment here. Let's talk about the different scan types. There's two primary scan types that are used that I've seen everywhere. One is, and this is an Icom terminology. I know that Uniden and those have different ones, but essentially it's with a program scan, we have scan edges. This is where we have the upper bound and the lower bound. So what you do is when you get to the airshow, you don't know what all the different frequencies that are being used. They don't publish those, so you need to search for them. So you basically set a lower bound and an upper bound. You program that in, and then you just let it run and pick up whatever frequencies people are talking to. So you start to hear what the frequency the Airbus is using and what the performers are using, and then you can plug those into your different banks so that you can narrow down the search later in the day. The next type of scanning, after you've done the major search through the edge scans, is you have what's called a bank scan, and you can preset this up if you know what the frequencies are, especially for things like the Blue Angels and that have been published in the monitoring times. Or you can update them on show day when you know what the frequencies are that they're using. But essentially what the bank is, it's basically a grouping of memory channels that have a very specific narrow scan range of known frequencies. So for example, A1, A2, A3, A4 could be the Blue Angels, and A5 and A298 could be the Airbus. Essentially, it's the bank scans that you want to be using with all the known frequencies, so you get some very quick hits on those. With this view here, it was really confusing for me trying to figure out what all the different scan options, but essentially when you look at this, the edge scans that you can do or the bank scans that you can do, if you look at the diagram on the left, that is an edge scan. You don't want the memory recall option selected, and when you hit the scan button, hold it down for 2 seconds, you'll have an option to go through a band, B-A-N-D, all the different memory channels, or specifically the program channels 0 through 24, and those are the ones where you set up a A and a B, a upper bound and a lower bound, and you then just scan and you cycle through all of those. That's the typical program scan. Then on the right hand side of that diagram, you now have a bank scan, and this is where you need to have the memory recall option selected, and then when you hold down the scan button for 2 seconds, you can then start scanning through the different banks that you set up, bank A, bank B, bank C, and that is your narrowed down grouping of memory channels that you actually want to be very active in when you do your actual scanning. So the option on the left for edge scans is basically like doing a search and trying to find out what hits there are, and the diagram on the right is the known select narrow frequencies memory channels that you're going to plug into a bank so that you can hone in on those and just focus on those once you've done your search and you know what the activities are for the day. Although this image is coming up now, it's basically should be the first one that you look at, because every scan that you're doing starts with a memory channel. And it took me, as basic as this is, I had to read the manual for a couple of weeks just to figure out that not to worry about banks and edge scans and groupings and everything. the bottom line is you need to know what are the frequencies that you want to monitor, and all you have to do is basically plug those into your scanner. You don't have to associate them to banks or anything. Just get a library or a list of all the frequencies that you want to scan, and designate a memory channel for that frequency. Once you have that, you can then go back and start applying a memory channel to either an edge scan as an upper or a lower bound frequency that you want to monitor in the range that it's going to loop through, or you start designating it to a bank. So you can then go through all the different memory channels you've set up and say, I want these to belong to bank A, bank B, bank C, or it can belong to multiple banks if you want to set it up like that as well. So this is the primary one, is where you start the work, is start putting in your list, your library, your list of memory channels in the library that you're going to keep over the months as you accumulate all of these from the different shows. So here's a sample of a spreadsheet that I keep for the different memory channels I've set in, as well as the banks that they're associated to. I typically separate out the banks by 50 memory channels. So the first memory channels of 0 to 49 I always keep open, and only memory channels go in there that I want to associate to bank A. I then skip any other memory frequencies I want to put in. I then start at 50 and go to 99, and I use that for bank B. I then use any other memory channels of 100 to 149 that I would then designate to bank C, and so it goes on. This way I don't add a whole hodgepodge of different frequencies that I have to try and figure out which bank do they belong to. So I keep a nice sequence there. What's good about these banks, and what's missing here as well is so typically what I use, bank A would be for the local tower, the local air traffic controller. Bank B is what I'd use for the performers. That includes the Airbus and any of the performers that are out there that have comm frequencies that you may want to monitor. Although during the aerobatic performance, it's usually typically quiet. You'll just hear the takeoff and landing and maybe a few other things, but it's typically very quiet there. Bank C I always use for the featured performers. That would be Blue Angels or Thunderbirds or Snowbirds or whoever the main guys are, and you can find that information in the monitoring guides. Bank D I set up is for the local police and public safety, because it's good to hear about the traffic and the parking problems, and maybe if there's any accidents, of how to get access to or access away from the showgrounds at the beginning and at the end of the day, because it can get very hectic with that. And then edge scans, again, A through H are the ones that we set up just to do searches to find out during the show day what is all the chatter going on and which are the relevant ones that we want to use. So in the next section of this video, I'm going to show how we program the rest of the Blue Angels frequencies into the system. At this time, I have in bank C, I've allocated the first 4 going up to memory channel 103. So it's starting in the next video, we're going to then select a memory channel of 305.5. We're then going to allocate it to 104 as the memory channel in the scanner. So we'll have a frequency of 305.5, give it a memory channel of 104, and when we have that, we're then going to designate it to bank C, and in bank C it'll be channel 4 of bank C, which you can make it anything you want, but that's how I've set it up. Then we'll move through to set up the next frequency of 305.9. We'll give it memory channel of 105, and we'll allocate that to bank C of C05. This way, now that when the Blue Angels take off and they start their prep and they take off, I just then set my scanner to bank C, and I only have 5 or 6 channels that I need to search through. And you can see here the designation of the first one, a solo, is not in the box, the diamond, but the main one, the show box, which is 284.25, that's for both solos and the diamond. You've got Fat Albert there, as well as the checklist frequency, the bottom one, where you can hear them doing their startups and they're rolling off into the air show. So let's move into the next part of this video, and I'll show you how I actually plugged some of these into the scanner. Okay, so if the audio has changed, sorry, I'm using a different microphone for this. You might have to adjust the volume. What we're going to go through here is set up some edge scans, and we're going to set up a bank, finish the banks for the Blue Angels. So essentially what we're doing with the edge scan is when you get to the air show, you're pretty much unsure as to what frequency the air boss and some of their performance will be on. And there's a range that we set, and you can see in the diagram it's pretty much from 126 through, from 118 through to 137. And then that's edge scan A and B. You can cycle through those and try and pick up what kind of frequencies there are, and key those into your system. What you also want to do is, if you're going to be monitoring the Blue Angels, is once you find out what the air boss frequency is, add that to the bank that you use, as well as any other frequencies that you want to still monitor while the Blue Angels are in the air. So let's start off here. One other thing here is that the scanner that I'm using, I got a diamond antenna. It's the SRH77CA. You can see that in the information in the show details underneath this video. Make sure for this the R6 scanner that you get the SRH antenna, because that's for the SMA connection. If you just get the RH, then you're going to have to get the BNC coupling attachment, and those aerials are kind of big and wieldy. So let's set up now for an edge scan. We already have I already have some programs in here. If you have a look here, if I go to mode scan, I already have edge scans. I have programs 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 7. Those are all the edge scans that I've actually designated that I stepped through, and you can find those in the monitoring guide. Let's create a program 8 edge scan, just so that we can understand how we're going to go through that process. So the first thing we want to do is get to the frequencies. So let's just make up some frequencies here. Let's get onto AM, and let's just say we want to, for some reason, we want to do 178.00. Then we hold down memory, and now for 2 seconds we're now in memory recall, and it's flashing. This is a memory channel of 104, but we actually want to get onto the edge scan channel, which is the designated A through, let's go down here all the way. So if we get down to, there's 24 of them that are actually hard coded in the system. These are the edge scans that I've set up. We're already on program, that's 7B. We now want this frequency we set up to become 8A, and we just hold it down here on the memory recall button. There it is. So 178 on the AM band is now set at 8A. Now we want to set our upper bound limit for this edge scan. So let's just say, for example, we wanted it to be 186. We then hold down memory recall for 2 seconds. It starts to blink. Oh, we messed that one up. And we want to set this one to 8B. So now so let's hold this in. So we have now an upper bound of 186 on 8B, and we have a lower bound. Let's go through there, and we have a lower bound of, I held that button down too long. Let me do this again. So let's hold this down. Let's make this our lower bound again of 176. So we hold this in. There we go. So 8A, the lower bound edge scan is at 176, and the upper bound for 8B is 186. The way that we'd actually go and scan for it now is you have to get into VFO mode, get out of the memory recall, and you hold down the scan button for 2 seconds. It now looks at all the different programs that you have. You can go program 0 all the way through. We had 7, we now created 8. And when you get into program 8, we want to scan that. We just hold the scan down till it starts. as soon as it hits a frequency, you can just turn the dial to keep it going. It should go up to 186, and it starts cycling again back at 176. So this is the edge scan, as we be scanning every frequency from the lower bound to the upper bound that we want to set in. Another thing just to think about here when we do go in and look at this is for 8A, if we go to the TS, so if we click on mode, what is the step frequency that we want to use? Here it's at 12.5, you could put it at 25. So this is the different frequencies that it skips through the steps as it goes through the cycle from the upper bound to the lower bound. So we'll keep that at 12A. So that's pretty simple of how you're setting up an edge scan. The difference here again is that if you want to scan for an edge scan, you do it without the memory recall button up, and you hold down your scan and it pops up here. If you want to scan on a bank, you have to have the memory recall button up, and this is how you start doing bank scans, bank C, bank A, for example. And this is a thing that tricked me for quite a while. But let's now look at finishing up the Blue Angels. Everything starts with setting a frequency. Once you have a frequency, you can then start setting the banks and the edge scans that you want to associate it to. And if you look remember a few slides back in the video, we looked at the different channels that I've designated for the Blue Angels. So if I was up to memory 104, I want to now finish the last three, and that'll be 3509 as a frequency. So if I hold down the function key, so that'll help me skip in larger increments, I'll go up to 305. Let me get out of here first. You must be off memory recall to do this. We might go up to 305. We're going to set our band here. 305.9. There we have it. And I hold down memory recall, and 104. I want this to be 105. That hasn't been taken. So I'm going to also hold down this mode button because I want to designate the bank. So I'm going to hold down the band key, and I'm going to get it to bank C, because all my Blue Angels is in bank C. It designated to 105, which is the memory channel. And I hold that down. Bang, there it is. 305.9 is now in memory channel 105 on bank C. So let's carry on then with 330. So I'm going to again put in my next frequency. So it's going to be 333.3. There we go. I'm going to hold memory recall. And if I want this to be on memory channel 106 that doesn't have any entries yet, I'll push the mode button, and then I'll push the band button for the bank that I want to associate it to. So I want it to go to bank C. So we have memory channel 106 on that frequency is now going into bank C at 0.6 as a marker. We hold down that button, and now we have one more. We're going to get the frequency of 346.5. This is the checklist frequency when they first start up and start gearing out to go, which is pretty cool to actually listen to. So we're going to go down to 34.6 and up to 0.5. Okay, so we hold down memory recall for 2 seconds. It shows us on 106, which is already designated at that frequency. So we want to put it on 107. We're going to hold down the mode button. It says what bank do you want to go in. We push the band button and to cycle through until we get to bank C. Now we're on bank C for 107. We hold this down. Great. So now I've finished designating. I have bank A that has the tower info for Sioux Falls as an example, and I have designated the bank C with all the Blue Angel scans, and I have the edge scan set up for the different frequencies I want to monitor when I get to the air show. So the way that we recall these banks is, as an example here, you have to move over to the memory recall option, then you hold down the scan button for 2 seconds, and it says, do you want to do a B-link? Do you want to scan all the banks that I've already preset? Do I want to do the link? Do I want to scan Bank A? Bank A is a Sioux Falls tower. Or do I want to do Bank C? And Bank C is specifically for the Blue Angels. When I know what the Airbus frequency is at the day of the air show, I'll add it to Bank C as well, so I have those communications coming through. So now I'm on Bank C. When the Blue Angels start getting busy and start firing up, I will push this on scan, and this is now going to cycle through all the channels that I designated, which is C00 through C007. And as I start getting hits, I'll see what all the traffic is on, and I can start adding skips to the channels that are quiet so that I can get a faster scanner result with that. So that's pretty simple. Let's look at the volume. The folks complain about the speaker as well. If we move this over, and I'm going to demonstrate now what the raw speaker sounds like through the microphone, and then I'm going to plug it into the digital recorder so that you can see the difference. Typically you will get a better sound reproduction if you use earphones on this. So let's cycle through this. Actually, I got to get out of memory recall. And let's just find the weather band, because that's easier to do.
Saturday, partly cloudy. Low 65 to 70. Highs 85 to 90. Now here is the hazardous weather outlook for northeast Minnesota and northwest Wisconsin. For this afternoon and tonight, scattered thunderstorms will occur across the boundary waters of northern Minnesota and along the ridge in Itasca County this afternoon. Storms are expected to remain below severe levels.
Okay, so that's what it sounds like just going through the the speaker. Let's plug this into the camera here. Actually, this might work even better. I don't have to use a digital recorder. I'm going to plug in my mono to stereo. I'm going to plug in my stereo, and then I'm going to plug this into the recorder right here. So you're not going to be able to hear me talking as soon as I unplug this microphone, because I'm just
2 feet or less. These are the 4 p.m. marine observations for Saturday, July 14th. At Grand Marais Harbor, the temperature was 75 degrees. The wind was southwest at 7 miles an hour. At Two Harbors, the temperature was 86 degrees. The wind was northwest at 7 miles an hour. At Sky Harbor, the temperature was 90 degrees. The wind was north at 6 miles an hour. At Ashland, the temperature was 86 degrees.